r/AskReddit. What are subtle red flags at a job interview that say working here would suck? Well, the overtime isn't mandatory, but most folks stick around after hours most days. Spoilers, the overtime is mandatory. Fantastic. You should know that, if you choose me for this position, I will be declining the optional overtime. I mean, if you're going to walk anyway, it might be funny to call their bluff. Once an interviewer straight up asked me if I had any trouble working for free on weekends. I told them my free time is more valuable than anything, and that the only way that I would work a weekend is if they are paying me, and if I felt like working a weekend. She got really mad at me and ended the interview right away. Biggest red flag I've ever seen, because they didn't even try to hide it. Since when is it legal to have employees working and not paying them? What a psycho. When you are signing all the forms they give you, and you are taking your time to read over every document so that you can fully understand what you are getting into, and people come in and start telling you that you don't need to read this and that just sign here and so on. I didn't know it at the time, but you'll be wearing many hats was a sign that they were going to give me the work of 4 positions and the wage of 1. I didn't last a year there before I left, and now I won't even finish reading job ads that include that line. You are required to wear clothing that has the company logo. You must purchase it yourself from the company. I once showed up for an interview and the manager wasn't there that day. No one called me to let me know. The assistant manager was not apologetic for the scheduling issue at all. She was literally just like, "Oh, she's not here today," in a tone that suggested I should somehow already know that. She said they would call me to reschedule sometime the next week. I told her I was currently unavailable from Monday to Wednesday, but could come in any time between Thursday and Friday. She said if I couldn't make time for the interview, I probably wouldn't be a good fit. I said okay, and went on to my other interviews, and ending up working elsewhere. You'd think that would be the end of it, but both the manager and the assistant manager badmouthed me to a few other people in the industry, including one of my friends. Hello. I made time for an interview. You disrespected me by not calling me to let me know it was cancelled. I gave you the times I was available to reschedule, and that was disrespectful somehow? When you ask, "What do you like about working here?" and the interviewer talks about the location of the job, "It's a great place to live," instead of the actual job. I asked this at one of my first interviews right out of school. My interviewer went, "That's a good question," and was ruminating for a good 2 minutes. She went with, "We get pretty good parking spots," and quickly followed with, "And the people are nice. HMN. At my last place of work, the person interviewing me had a printed cartoon on their wall of someone who looked like a bomb had blown up in their face, with the caption, "I spoke with boss name about it. I guess we are still doing it." That wasn't subtle at all, but I ignored it. The boss was an absolute tyrant who wouldn't listen to her staff, consider changing her mind about anything, or let people do the work they were best suited to do. She wouldn't show up for weeks at a time. The job itself was decent, but she was the worst boss I've ever had. "We only want the best of the best me. How much are you paying?" "Minimum wage." If you can see the floor before the interview, you can sometimes get a vibe about the place. I once went to interview for a sales position. Aside from the interviewer being 30 minutes late, it did allow me to sit and observe the situation. I realized pretty quickly this was not going to be the place for me. Very quiet except a handful of people on the phones cold calling. Many reps trying to push for contacts on the other end. Just painful to listen to, and when they'd hang up there wasn't really any interaction with coworkers. Just quiet, and then another call. It all seemed very tense. I noped out of there real quick after the 5 minutes the interview took. Dodged a bullet. I had interviewed for a call center job at another place that's as a complete 180 from that. Yes, it's a call center job, so it is what it is, but there was laughter on the floor. People talking to floor managers. Just a completely different vibe that was more inviting. I was once told sometimes the hourly workers go on strike and they lock us in to keep the production line running, but management brings us steaks and we have an informal agreement with the unions. So you can cross the picket lines once a week to visit your wife. The question was subtle red flags. Do you have a strong personality? Meant everyone else who worked there were raging cunts who I literally got into massive shouting matches with and quit over within 6 months of having started. The money was good, but no thank you. I went into an interview for a low-level admin position, and they made me put my cell phone in a bucket up front, stating no phones are allowed in the back, it reduces productivity. Big nope for me. When they tell you what I'm paying you stays between you and me. Don't discuss pay with anyone else usually means they are trying to pay you less than your coworkers who do the same job and don't want you to know. Had an online interview with a company a few years ago. Was interviewed by the regional manager. Seemed like a normal interview. Halfway through, he let slip that there were 6 other people from his company watching and listening in, but the software was set up so I could not see or hear them. And he actually got a kick out of telling me this. It was like being on a first date with someone and finding out later she had a hidden camera on her and her parents and 6 other family members were watching the whole time. I'm like, yeah, no, fuck that noise. When they insist the suicide nets are merely a safety precaution, therefore catching butterflies. When they get the interview time wrong and then gaslight you about it. I've had a couple interviews where that happened and the person told me it was me who made the mistake. I did not feel bad missing the opportunity. I had an interview once. The owner of the company told me he was going to hire me, let the man in the office train me, then fire that man once I was up to speed. He also told me that sometimes employees have to hold their paycheck. And the final capper, not that I needed it, I had already decided not to work for him, was he told me I looked like his nephew. I'm female. In an open workspace area, behind the interviewing manager's shoulder, one of his employees silently mouthed the words, "Don't work here." If one or more family members work for the boss, their kids especially, you'll end up getting screwed, while their family members get raises and get the easy stuff. You'll end up overworked, underpaid and talked down to no matter how much seniority you have. No one decorates their desk. Means that either they don't get their own desk, no one has time for any interests outside of work, or the culture is stuffy and no fun. Similarly, for tech in particular, if everyone has the same brand of keyboard it's because they have to. Basically no one chooses to code for 8 hours a day on a cheap Microsoft keyboard if they can help it. I always ask individuals/interviewers how they like working there. The response doesn't matter, it's the time they take to respond. If they immediately chime in with positives it's usually a safe work environment, but if they pause to think about it, that is a big red flag. When the guy interviewing you is flirting with you, bail. We ain't got no toilet here. Thank you for watching. Please consider subscribing or giving a like. See you. Mwah.